We're so excited you joined ListenLayer. It's going to simplify your conversion tracking and give you superpowers when it comes to web analytics. I want to take just a minute to show you around your account before you dive in, so you can get started easily. Let's jump in. When you first create a new ListenLayer account, you should focus on accomplishing 3 simple goals. We're going to walk through these. Take a quick screenshot for your notes. The first goal is to install ListenLayer on your website and verify that it's working correctly. Once that's done, we want to choose a listener and generate some data layer activity. After that, we want to make sure that we learn our way around the interface. Your new ListenLayer account will contain prompts at the top of the screen, walking you through the setup. The first step will be to navigate to Website under Integrations. This is where we will define our website domain name and get a copy of our script tag, which will need to be placed on every page of our website. ListenLayer requires us to define our domain name, the exact domain name that the script will run on. So if your website contains www, you'll want to include that here. If you want to run ListenLayer across multiple websites or multiple domains, such as blog.mywebsite.com, you can always add additional domains. Here, we're going to define our domain name so that we can test out our script. Once our domain name is defined, we can navigate down to the Install Script section and copy this script. We'll need to place this on every single page of our website. And the easiest way to do this is to put it inside of Google Tag Manager. Let's take a look. Inside of Google Tag Manager, we recommend staying organized from the beginning. So we're going to go ahead and create a folder called ListenLayer, or perhaps called ListenLayer Main, because we will have additional folders that contain ListenLayer scripts in the future. Within this folder, we're going to create a new tag. And we're just going to call this ListenLayer Main Script. Simply select the custom HTML tag type and paste the tag that was copied from the ListenLayer interface. And then select to fire this on all pages. And that's it. All you have to do is save and publish your changes. Then we'll take a look at the website to make sure that everything is working well. After publishing our Google Tag Manager changes, we navigate to our website. Right-click, select Inspect, and navigate to the console, where we will reload the page. What we're expecting to see here is an object written into the console by ListenLayer. In this case, we're not seeing any additional objects here. And that's because we purposefully forgot one critical step. Make sure that you jump back to your ListenLayer and publish your changes. Similar to Google Tag Manager, all changes will need to be published before they go live. In this case, we added our domain name and we forgot to publish. Let's just create a version called domain and we'll go ahead and publish. Now we can navigate back to our website, complete a quick hard reload, and all of a sudden we see a new object appear in our console. It starts with account ID, and it includes this long string, which is our ListenLayer account. In addition, you can see the name of the account, the level or package that you're on, and as we turn on specific listeners and features, those will be available down here. Get familiar with this because it allows you to determine whether ListenLayer is running correctly on your website so that you can debug problems that you might have. Once we have ListenLayer running on our website, we can also verify that the script tag is loading on our website. This can be useful if for some reason you're still finding that ListenLayer is not loading on the site. Simply click that wheel and we'll let you know if we find the script. There are situations where ListenLayer will work even though we might not find the script. For example, if you're running ListenLayer on unbounce pages, you may be using a domain that doesn't actually have any content at the top level. As a result, we can't verify the script, but when you visit a specific landing page, you'll still be able to see that. So now that we have our domain verified, let's go back up to our prompts. And we see here that we need to actually enable some listeners to get data layer activity. So jumping to the listeners section under integrations, we're going to find a listener that we want to work with. In this case, we use HubSpot a lot. So let's turn on HubSpot forms and see what happens. Now that the new listener is enabled, you can see it appears down here in our left-hand navigation. And we can see a quick prompt that tells us to turn on features. Every listener contains specific features. And until these features are enabled and your account is published, nothing's going to happen on the website. We recommend focusing on features that are listed as activity features. These are the ones that push information into the data layer. In this case, let's track when forms load on our website pages. This will help us to identify forms and debug them. We can also use it to track impressions, but for the most part, this is useful when we're setting up our accounts. Let's also track form submissions. Now that we have these two features on, when we publish our account, we would expect to see activity in our data layer. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll test it out. Navigating back to our website, I like to complete a hard refresh just to make sure I'm not getting anything old that's in cache. And I'm going to navigate to a page that contains a HubSpot form. This page actually contains multiple forms because it allows us to complete our testing. You can see here, we now have 4 additional events that are being written into the console. ListenLayer is actually pushing this information into the data layer, but we also write it to the console so that it's easy for you to see. If we were to have Google Tag Manager's debug view on, we would see this as well. Let's submit a form and take a look at that in Google Tag Manager's debug view. So we're back in Google Tag Manager, and we're going to go ahead and launch our website using the debug tool. This will allow us to easily see the data layer activity directly inside of GTM. And we can see now that those same form loaded events are appearing here inside of Google Tag Manager. If you want to learn more about the structure of the data layer and specifically how to use them, then there'll be a button below this video that you can click on to go and watch and learn about the basics of data layers. For now, we're going to go ahead and submit a form on our website. And you can see this form was submitted. The user was not redirected to a thank you page. And jumping back to our debug view, we can see the data layer activity is flowing here. And if we want to, we can still inspect, take a look at our console, and we'll be able to see the same information. So now we've confirmed that not only is ListenLayer working, but we've enabled a listener and some features, and we now have some data layer activity to work with. So let's jump back into ListenLayer and get more familiar with the interface so we can start to customize things. ListenLayer is a very powerful tool and allows us to do many things. But don't be overwhelmed by the interface. It operates based on a pattern, and once you understand that pattern, it'll be easy to make your way around. As we saw before, your website settings appear under integrations. And also, you can enable other listeners that you might be interested in, or click on these Learn More buttons to watch videos, which will walk you through how every single listener works. Once a listener is enabled, it contains a sub-navigation. The first navigation item contains features for that listener. All of the features that are listed under activities are the ones that push specific information into the data layer. Other features allow you to customize the data layer and how it operates, or, for example, store information in the browser or push information into forms as they load on your website. In addition, there'll be features for monitoring and sending notifications to yourself, and enabling reporting. Before we take a look at any of those specific features, it's important to note that every listener will have an event settings screen and a variables screen. Every possible event that can be pushed into the data layer by this listener will be listed under event settings. This screen will allow you to learn more about each event and generally keep track of them. Oftentimes, there may be a little gear icon that allows you to customize them, depending on the listener. The variable settings screen lists all of the variables that have ever been seen automatically inside of your data layer. So a listener sits on your website and waits for activity to occur. And once that activity occurs, it automatically collects information from the activity. Every single variable will appear here. For example, you can see that just because we started to load our HubSpot forms on our website, all of the available fields in those forms are already appearing here because ListenLayer automatically collects those and pushes them into the data layer. Now, it's important to note, we aren't storing the values from inside of these fields. We're simply storing the field names themselves and the various attributes. You can assign friendly names to these. Those do not change the variables in the data layer. They just make this variable easier to find inside of ListenLayer. Navigating back to features, you are able to turn on data layer reporting, which allows us to collect data about how many events and specific variables appear in your data layer. In a few moments, we'll take a look at an account that has reporting enabled so you can look at this feature. Before that, however, it's important to note that when you turn on a new feature, it'll almost always enable a new screen under the listener. Here, we've just turned on the ability to write rules that push custom values into our data layer. And so you can navigate to this screen and you can learn more about what's required to actually utilize this feature. And then you can dive in and start to build. Here, we're taking a look at an account that has reporting enabled and is collecting a lot of information across many listeners that are generating data layer activity. Now, this enables a global reporting section, which allows us to view trend lines of data layer event activity over time. We can also segment that. For example, if we just want to see how many HubSpot forms have been submitted, we can filter this graph to only show that. Down at the bottom, we can see specific information about that data layer event, including the count of every single variable that ever appeared inside of that. Certain reporting plans allow you to enable reporting values. We use this to store actual values from the data layer to help with reporting and debugging. But it's important to know that it's against our terms of service to store any personally identifying information such as names, phone numbers, and emails. You can use the reporting feature to understand more about the activity on your website and to act as a backup for your other analytics tools. Specifically, if you jump into an individual listener and enable reporting, you'll also see a reporting tab appear underneath that listener's navigation. Now, finally, let's take a look at the overall account settings screen. This allows you to name your website and see information specifically about the activity in your account, including the number of events that have been used, how many are remaining, and see current and past information about your bills and your upcoming charges. Thanks for taking a couple minutes to make sure your account is set up correctly. Now you can jump into other listeners for applications you use and user activity you want to track. Start by deploying something simple like form tracking based on a single event from our listeners. Then work on getting more advanced. I would recommend focusing on custom data layer variables, which is a powerful feature available on most of our listeners. Oh, and if you're brand new to data layers, click the button below and we'll open up an Introduction to Data Layers video in a new tab.